Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with If I Could Choose Only One Recording by Artist X, it would have to be of work Y. And this is by special request or kick in the butt by the evil god Cancrozans, who, as I mentioned, has declared that he's so irritated with the classical music universe and the people who populate it that he's going to destroy all of classical music, but for one work per composer or one recording per artist, which will at least give us a chance to get a couple other works in there, right? I mean, at least that's what he said. But then again, he's a god. He doesn't have to be logical, does he? So, who is Artist X? Artist X is the Russian conductor Yevgeny Mravinsky, the amazing Mravinsky with his Leningrad Philharmonic. And the work in question, the recording in question is this one, Shostakovich Symphony number 8, the 1982 recording, which is on the Alto label, pitch corrected. It was always pitched a little high. You know, the symphony's in C minor, and sometimes it was in C sharp minor. I didn't care particularly. It's the same music. You play it up half a step. Well, you know. Anyway, here it's fixed, at least theoretically. I like I said, it's not a big deal either way. However, picking a recording by Mravinsky is tricky. It's very tricky. You know, for those of you who don't know who he was, I mean, he was the music director in Leningrad for like a billion years until the 1980s. Under dictator after dictator after dictator, and he was a dictator. He forged an orchestra of unbelievably high standards of playing. You can hear that in his Tchaikovsky symphonies for Deutsche Grammophon, some of the few studio recordings he made. He did not like studio recordings. He didn't make them. And that's where the problem lies, because a lot of his recordings date from the 40s and 50s and 60s. They're on Melodia. They're live. Melodia sonics were horrible, even when they were under studio conditions, and they were even worse when they were live. So finding good sounding Mravinsky is not easy, and it has to be. It has to be a good sounding recording, first of all, because you want to hear his art at its best, which most impactful, which means sonically, there has to be something there. Now, that Tchaikovsky set on Deutsche Grammophon is, of course, stunning, and sort of a reference set for those pieces, and it's been sort of legendary as an example or an exemplar of what he achieved with that orchestra. Unbelievably disciplined string playing at hair-raising tempos, a solidity of sound to the strings that could only be compared to Herbert von Karajan, for example, in the Berlin Phil, although it's a grainier sound. It's not a sensuous, soft, gushy, mushy sound. The basses particularly really grind. It's very, very powerful. The brass are Russian brass. They're kind of like, paint-peelingly ear-splitting at times. And the woodwinds are, well, similar. It's really kind of the French school, that somewhat dry nasal quality, but they were all the best at what they did. Because if they didn't, they were going straight to the gulag. Yes, that was the deal. Mravinsky is best known, however, despite the excellence of that Tchaikovsky stuff, for premiering a lot of the great symphonies of Shostakovich. He welched on the 13th, on Babi Yar, for reasons whether he was anti-Semitic or he was politically afraid of the repercussions or whatever reason. He was kind of a turncoat when it came to the Babi Yar Symphony. But before that, he had done, the premieres of all the Shostakovich major symphonies from like the 5th onward. And he was just extraordinary in that music. It had the imprimatur of the composer. The provenance is impeccable. It's amazing when you can have new works played at that level of excellence right from the start. Although Karel Anschel, the Czech Philharmonic, beat him out when it came to the 10th. Not that they premiered it, but they just did a better job, actually. There are many recordings of the 8th, including from the time of the premiere, from the 1940s, in absolutely unlistenable sound. And there were usually microphones hanging around whenever he was on tour, and so they picked up a lot of performances of his. But as with Furtwängler and other conductors who didn't like studio recording and who could be hot and cold, a lot of those recordings are just not acceptable. They really aren't. So wading through the pile to find the best is a bit of a job. Mravinsky was also one of those conductors who spent his entire career with a single ensemble, as Eugene Ormandy did, who made one recording that wasn't with Philadelphia once he got to Philadelphia. And I don't think there's any Mravinsky that's not with Leningrad. At least I haven't seen any. There may be some out there. Some people may know better than I do. But the vast majority, I mean, the overwhelming majority of everything that he did was with his orchestra. And that is something you just do not hear today. And that makes these recordings all the more valuable. Therefore, if I had to choose only one recording, it would be this Shostakovich Eighth, which is stunning, terrifying, powerful beyond all reckoning, amazingly paced, and really of a type that we're not going to hear anymore, because the circumstances of performance don't exist. Some may say that's a good thing, but for whatever reason, Mravinsky and his orchestra achieved something very, very, very unique. And in this recording, you can hear it very, very clearly. So I hope Kankerzans has a good time with it, and I hope you have too. We've talked about this performance many times, but as I've said also many times, it doesn't make any sense to think something's the best if you don't talk about it regularly, does it? Because people have to hear about it, or else they're not going to be able to listen to it. So listen to it, and keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.